Tonight, Joe Biden's appeal to American voters as the former VP officially makes the case to challenge Trump in November.
I accept this nomination for President of the United States of America.
And with the nation's schools and universities already struggling with reopening, our interview with White House Coronavirus Task Force Coordinator, Dr. Deborah Birx.
That the Postal Service is fully capable and committed to delivering the nation's election mail securely and on time.
This as the Postal Service Master General takes the virtual hot seat under fire on Capitol Hill. And Confederate statues on the chopping block. What that means for tensions in the former capital of the Confederacy. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. American darkness versus American greatness. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup. With the DNC now in the rearview, President Trump is trying to reframe the debate ahead of the Republican convention. This after Joe Biden's pledge to defeat COVID-19 and lead the nation out of what he described as a season of darkness brought on by the Trump administration. But will it be enough to convince the voters? CBN's Eric Phillips joins us now with more. Eric?
Well, John, good evening. The final night of the DNC was all about highlighting the compassion and experience of Joe Biden. His campaign hopes that will be enough to set him apart from his competition. Also on this final night, faith took a front seat.
So it's with great honor and humility, I accept this nomination for President of the United States of America.
Words the former vice president had been waiting to say all week. He went on to declare that character, compassion, and decency are all on the ballot in November.
All elections are important, but we know in our bones this one is more consequential.
He made it clear that as president, he would implement a plan to tackle the pandemic on day one, to include deploying COVID tests capable of yielding immediate results, ramping up American-made medical supplies, and a national mask mandate.
Because I understand something this president hasn't from the beginning. We will never get our economy back on track. We will never get our kids safely back in schools. We'll never have our lives back until we deal with this virus.
The event culminated with fireworks outside of the Delaware venue. The nominees and their spouses joined hand in hand.
Let us pray.
The night began with a focus on faith.
For Joe, faith isn't a prop or a political tool. I've known Joe about 30 years, and I've seen his faith in action. Joe knows the power of prayer.
There was nothing really to prepare me as a new military spouse on how to deal with the stress.
Military families took center stage with strong words from Senator Tammy Duckworth, who lost her legs while serving in Iraq.
Donald Trump doesn't deserve to call himself commander-in-chief for another 4 minutes, let alone another 4 years.
I have on my marching shoes. That's right. I'm fired up.
The night also included a tribute to the late Congressman John Lewis, which touched on another central theme of Biden's speech.
America's ready, in John's words, to lay down, quote, the heavy burden of hate at last.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
This is our moment to make hope and history rhyme. With passion and purpose, let us begin, you and I together.
On the subject of national security, Biden said as president he would, quote, protect the U.S. from every attack, seen and unseen, always, without exception, every time. Now, the countdown to the debates and election, that countdown is on, and the Democrats know they have a lot of work to do between now and then. And, of course, Republicans get their opportunity to be on the center stage at the national level come next week, John.
That's right, Eric, and we know that President Trump hasn't exactly been lying low during the convention, and today he spoke at another event, pushing an interesting theory if things turn sideways this November, Eric.
That's right. He was talking about what he called a potential disaster where counting and verifying votes were concerned, particularly in light of using widespread mail-in voting, and what happens if there are no results by the end of the year. Take a listen.
51 million votes. It's being sent, and nobody knows who's getting them. And what happens if you send them to an all-Democrat area but not to an all-Republican area? How do you win an election? You know, there's a theory that if you don't have it by the end of the year, crazy Nancy Pelosi would become president. You know that, right?
And as you could hear there, that statement was followed by some boos. And John, today the president also talked about the difference between his competition in 2016 versus today. He said that Hillary Clinton was much smarter than Joe Biden, but not well-liked, while Joe Biden is more well-liked, but not smart. John.
All right. Thanks, Eric. We appreciate your reporting all this week. Well, tonight, a CBN News exclusive as America battles the pandemic. We talk with the woman coordinating the federal response to the coronavirus, Dr. Deborah Birx. She spoke exclusively to CBN's David Brody about everything from receiving death threats to in-person voting. What she had to say about that and the latest on vaccines.
I just came from our vaccine meeting that we have weekly, chaired by the Secretary of HHS. And really, we're hearing the vaccine trials, 2 of them are enrolling, and the enrollment is going well. This is the last phase of that evaluation. Vaccines are being manufactured, and that's going well. And the third step is, does it work? Wow. And we're hoping to get that information throughout this same quarter that I'm talking about, in the fall quarter. And then being able to immunize individuals, because we know that we'll have vaccine if it's shown to be efficacious. And then every American that's at risk needs to come forward and get vaccinated. And so that's the 4th step of it.
I'm assuming you would want, everyone vaccinated, or who should get vaccinated?
Well, first and foremost, the individuals at highest risk and highest exposure. But we have a group, an independent group right now, making recommendations of who should be vaccinated first, who should be vaccinated second, who should be vaccinated third. I mean, certainly we would want to vaccinate those that we know are at the highest risk.
Some folks would be concerned about the federal government. This is a government question about whether or not vaccine should be mandatory for all Americans. In other words, you can't go to a grocery store or sporting event or wherever, get on a plane without having the vaccine.
Well, that's an interesting suggestion, and I'm going to take that back. Thank you for making it.
When I said the planes and things like that, is that, I mean, I don't know if you were being tongue-in-cheek or not.
No, I mean, I hadn't heard that. No one has asked me that question.
About the planes and all of that.
No one has asked me that question. And I think that's really a very important question.
On churches, obviously, we're CBN, the 700 Club. You've seen the headlines. There are a lot of pastors, especially out in California and other places, say, look, we're going to hold indoor services. I know the folks in California, for example, want us to have an outdoor service, but they believe, for whatever reasons, they want to have it indoors. What do you say to pastors that are having those services indoors, many of them actually without masks, but even some that do have masks? What's the message here?
Churches are filled with people who are compassionate and passionate for each other. Let's show that compassion for each other and the humility to really say, now we know masks work. And so wearing a mask, staying 6 feet apart, sure, you can sit as a family, but let's wear a mask to respect the other family. And let's wear a mask to protect that 83-year-old who's coming to church. Let's not make church only for the healthy. Let's ensure that everybody can be there. And in order for everybody to be there, we have to be in masks and socially distanced.
Some California officials will say outdoor only, but you're saying, well, indoor with certain requirements.
Well, if the same officials are having meetings, because they have to really discuss what to do with the virus, if people are meeting and socially distancing in federal or state buildings, then you can bring that same safety to any American. But you need to really be rigid about wearing a mask and socially distancing.
From a health perspective, there will be a lot of people voting in November, and I know they've talked a lot about mail-in balloting, but what about just going to the polls? I mean, is it safe to go to the polls?
Well, I can tell you it has been safe for me to go to Starbucks and pick up my order. So if I can go into Starbucks, wait in my line, socially distanced, and...
It is safe to go to the polls.
Well, certainly I have gone into Starbucks.
Yes.
So if it's safe for me to go into Starbucks in the middle of Texas and Alabama and Mississippi that have very high case rates, then, I can't say that it would be different waiting in line in the polls.
And there's going to be critics, and there's going to be, everybody left and right, and you just want to do science. You want to be a doctor. You want to help people. But how has this been for you personally to kind of deal with everything swirling around you?
Well, like Dr. Fauci, I do get death threats, and I get text messages that are horrific, and I get stuff sent to my home where my daughters are that is shocking, and their phones get shocking messages. I mean, all of that has been happening since March. I'm very devoted to making sure that these cases go down, the hospitalizations go down, and critically, that people stop succumbing to this virus.
All right, great interview, David. Coming up, the Postmaster General takes the virtual hot seat under fire on Capitol Hill.
Come home to the sounds of Southern Gospel from CBN Radio. You'll enjoy a rich Southern blend of bluegrass, classic gospel, and Southern gospel favorites like the Gaithers, the Crab Family, and bluegrass sounds like Mountain Faith. So make yourself at home with the all-new CBN Southern Gospel, now available at cbnradio.com.
Meet the pastors who are preaching the gospel in a fresh, fearless way. I'm Roberto Torres-Cedillo. Join me each week for Next Gen Voices. And watch God transform a generation.
Prophecy thousands of years old.
We were called to be a light to the world.
Being fulfilled today. Discover how. Get to life. Call 1-800-700-7000.
We consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world.
For a gift of $10 or more, you can own the acclaimed CBN documentary To Life. Just call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
To treat a human, no matter what he is, which religious he have, which color he is. This is what I'm doing.
See how the people of Israel are fulfilling prophecy.
History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
By sharing their knowledge.
In Africa, in Asia, in South America, in East Europe.
And their love.
This is how we work. This is us.
Get to life. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
And welcome back. Election sabotage. During a heated hearing on Capitol Hill, the Postmaster General defended against accusations that the Postal Service is trying to upend the elections. Senior National Affairs correspondent Heather Sells joins us now with more. Heather, he called those accusations outrageous.
Right, John. Louis DeJoy has been on the job for just 67 days, but he did his best today to assure senators that nothing will jeopardize the election and that it's his top priority.
At today's hearing, senators grilled the Postmaster General about efficiency and financial problems, and pointedly about changes he made and then reversed this week that could impact the election. Changes like removing blue collection boxes, closing some facilities, and eliminating overtime.
Prior to implementing the changes that you put forth in the postal system, did you discuss those changes, or are there a potential impact on the November election with the president or anyone at the White House? And remind you, you're under oath.
I have never spoken to the president about the Postal Service other than to congratulate me when I accepted the position.
DeJoy said delivering the election mail this year will be a sacred duty and his #1 priority.
As we head into the election season, I want to assure this committee and the American public that the Postal Service is fully capable and committed to delivering the nation's election mail securely and on time.
Senate Homeland Security Chair Ron Johnson, a Republican, led the hearing and condemned concerns from Democrats that the Postal Service could interfere with the election.
According to Democrats, the postmaster is trying to sabotage the postal system to disenfranchise voters in the upcoming election. Notices that were sent before he was sworn in, meant to inform election officials to factor in normal postal capabilities in setting their ballot deadlines, are being used as evidence of this conspiracy theory.
DeJoy said today that in his 2 months on the job, he's improved the efficiency of postal delivery, but still faces a record loss of $9 billion this year. What's not helping, declining mail volume and carriers calling out sick because of COVID. Tomorrow, the House plans to vote on whether to deliver a $25 billion aid package to the Postal Service.
And John, roll call noted this afternoon that DeJoy actually told the senators later today that he doesn't want that $25 billion. He said, if we just throw $25 billion at us this year and we don't do anything, we'll be back in 2 years. And he also said that he has voted by mail for a number of years and that he plans to do so this year. John.
All right, Heather Sells, thank you, Heather. Well, time now for our Faith Nation political panel with CBN's David Brody, chief political analyst, and Julia Manchester, political reporter at The Hill. Julia, to you first on post office politics. Did Postmaster General Louis DeJoy do enough to convince both senators and Americans of the integrity of voting by mail this November?
You know, I think there are definitely still questions about its integrity and really the pitfalls and maybe some of the issues that the Postal Service is reportedly, according to some, going through. You know, I think Democrats are very skeptical about DeJoy in this position, being a Trump appointee, being a Trump donor. So I think that definitely makes things harder for them to accept just 3 months out from an election. And when you, on top of that, you hear President Trump criticizing vote by mail quite frequently.
Story far from over. David, to Biden's big night. Forbes had a headline that characterized last night's performance as Biden's home run. Chris Wallace of Fox News said he blew a big hole in Trump's caricature that he's mentally shot. David, how do you measure success?
Well, first of all, I thought it was an A-plus speech. I mean, a big sticky face for Joe Biden. But, you know, look, what happens when the prompter goes away, and we're going to find out in about a month or so when those debates hit and becomes a cage match between Trump and Biden, and it's going to be ad lib galore. But back to the speech, the way you measure success is, can you connect with the American people? And I think he did that last night. He connected, especially on the COVID-19 families, talking about his tragedy and their tragedy. He had passion and all of that. Notice, though, it was very light on specifics and details. That is the devil in the details for the Dems.
So the DNC in the rear view, we know that the Republican National Convention starts Monday. To both of you, we only have about a minute left. What does President Trump and the GOP have to do to regain momentum and shift the narrative? To Julia first, then David.
Well, I think the GOP will gain some momentum after this convention, given that happens with any party's convention normally. But I think they are going to have to talk about issues that appeal to their base, such as the economy, and focus on economic recovery. I think you are going to hear Republicans say, look, President Trump got us to a great place economically in the first part of his administration. The coronavirus pandemic really threw everyone for a loop. So we are going to focus on recovery. Trump can do that.
Yeah, and John, I would just say, look, Joe Biden's talked about wanting to restore the soul of the nation. I think Donald Trump and the Republicans, especially Trump next week, has to come out and say, I want to protect the nation. I want to protect and preserve the nation's founding principles and go back to law and order and all of that. So I think that's the key for him.
Julia, David, we always appreciate your insights and perspective. Thank you so much, and hope you both have a great weekend.
You too, John.
Well, tearing down statues and strongholds. When we come back, the response from some churches after the removal of monuments in the former capital of the Confederacy.
Too often, we carry baggage from our past. You know what it's like. It affects everything and everyone in our lives. It's always there, weighing us down and keeping us from achieving true happiness. But do you know God never meant for us to be trapped in the past? You can be free of your baggage. Learn how God's forgiveness leads to changed lives and new beginnings. Call the 700 Club.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5, Wednesday night at 9:30.
Tikkun Olam.
This is our nature as a country.
To make the world a better place.
Literally, we felt the earth shaking.
The Christian Broadcasting Network presents To Life, how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
This film needs to be seen by everyone.
I was in tears.
Now you can own the inspiring documentary To Life on DVD.
There is blood on our hands if we know and we walk away.
I'm so grateful that this film was made.
To Life can be yours for a gift of $10 or more. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to CBN.com.
We know that every minute counts to save life.
It'll bless Israel, but it'll also bless all the friends of Israel.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are making the world a better place. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to CBN.com to get your copy today.
Welcome back. Richmond's Monument Avenue has been considered one of the most controversial streets in America, lined with Confederate statues until the massive George Floyd protests when most of them were removed. Tonight, we take a historical look at the monuments and the Black church's response to their removal. Once again, here's CBN's Eric Phillips.
While protests have quieted down some, especially along Monument Avenue, tensions remain high in this former capital of the Confederacy.
The real estate in the middle of Monument Avenue in Richmond is emptier than just a few short months ago. Pedestals that once held statues of Confederate leaders now covered in graffiti. In the midst of a pandemic, crowds poured into the streets, defacing and dismantling the statues after George Floyd's killing. In July, the mayor used his executive power to remove many of them.
I've given this order for two reasons. First, it's a matter of public safety. The second reason I act today is because it is past time. As the capital city of Virginia, we have needed to turn this page for decades. And today, we will.
It is significant in that it's like your voice is finally being heard.
Richmond area pastor Emmanuel Harris says these times are leading the Black church to reinvent itself in some ways.
I think in this season, the Black church is trying to find its role because many movements in the past were church-led. Civil rights era, a lot of those movements were, especially in the Black church, were church-led. If you look at a lot of these modern protests, the preachers are not, they may be in them, but they're not at the forefront. In this day and age, the preacher is not the expert in everything. I think as a minister, we have to be comfortable creating a stage and not so much being on stage.
The Robert E. Lee Monument was the first and largest one to be erected here along Monument Avenue in Richmond, Virginia. Ironically, it would be the last one standing after the others here had been taken down.
The Lee Monument was built in 1890, then similar tributes popped up, including those to Confederate generals Jeb Stuart, Stonewall Jackson, and Confederate President Jefferson Davis. Signature pieces in what became an exclusive neighborhood for the white elite. In nearby Monroe Park, the statue of Confederate General Williams Carter Wickham was installed in 1891. Protesters took matters into their own hands, toppling that one back in June. So that didn't happen again. City workers took down the others per the mayor's orders, while Lee's statue remained.
So I am directing the Department of General Services to remove the statue of Robert E. Lee as soon as possible.
Easier said than done, as it's the only statue on state property. The removal of the Lee Monument entangled in legal red tape as some challenge the governor's decision.
In 2020, we can no longer honor a system that was based on the buying and selling of enslaved people. It was wrong then, and it is wrong now.
So you can tear down a statue, but it doesn't mean that policies, practices, institutions that perpetuate racism have been torn down. And to tear those down would take much, much more time. This is a marathon, not a sprint. For those of us who understand just the level and layers of society and systemic racism that exists in our culture.
I asked Pastor Harris if God is pleased by the statues coming down.
Absolutely, yes.
The only statue addition to Monument Avenue after the Confederate shrines came just 24 years ago to a very different figure, Arthur Ashe, a world-renowned African-American tennis pro and son of Richmond. That monument still stands. Eric Phillips, CBN News.
Coming up, an essential message from one of America's essential frontline workers.
It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
From Washington, D.C., uncompromising stories, interviews, and analysis from veteran journalists David Brody.
Escalating fight.
Jenna Browder.
Chose his words carefully.
Ben Kennedy.
Plan to join him.
And Amber Strong.
Or impeachment grows a little bit louder.
Bringing you the political news that matters.
We get out and tell the story of the progress that we're making in this country.
Watch Faith Nation, weeknights at 6 on the CBN News Channel.
We will move the American embassy to the eternal capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem.
As the nations rage, you can stand with Israel.
History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
Call 1-800-700-7000 and get to life.
This is our nature as a country.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
We consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world.
For a gift of $10 or more, you can own the acclaimed CBN documentary To Life.
To treat a human, no matter what he is, which religious he has, which color he is. This is what I'm doing.
Support Israel in their time of need. Get to Life, now available on DVD. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
And I wish that other people throughout the world could see this side of Israel.
Finally tonight, their days, like many other essential workers, begin at the crack of dawn. But the work of trash collectors is often a thankless job. That's not the case, though, for Terrell Hagler, who started posting videos documenting the kindness he and his coworkers see from families on his Philadelphia neighborhood route.
If you see your trash man today, smile, wave, show him love.
Hagler and his crew are often greeted with water, snacks, and donations. The kindness inspired him to start his own fundraiser, where he sells T-shirts to raise money for PPE and cleaning supplies for trash collectors and their trucks. What a great story. Well, that is going to do it for tonight's Faith Nation. We hope you have a great weekend, and we'll see you back here on Monday.